Hi everyone, welcome back to this new video of our backend series. In this video, we are going to create the to-do controller. In the previous video, we have written about the user controller where we have implemented two functionalities about creating an user, that was the sign up, and also about logging in a particular user once his account is created. In this particular video, we are going to create the to-do controller, and the main four objective of the to-do controller is to create the to-do. One is to read the to-do of a particular user, read all the to-dos that a particular user has created. Apart from this, there will be an function to update a status of a to-do, whether it has been completed or not. And at last, there will be an endpoint to delete a particular to-do that a particular user has created. So these are the four major functionality which we intend to achieve by the end of this video. So we are going to write the to-do controller in this video. So let's go to our code editor and let's start coding. So we are in our code editor. So as you can see, this is the user controller which we have written in the previous video. So to start making the to-do controller, the first important step is to just create a file called the to-do controller.js. So to-do controller.js in the controllers folder. Once that is done, we can start creating the function. Before actually starting to create the function, let us first write our objective in our comment. So the first objective is to function to create to do. Next will be function to read all the to do of a particular user. Third will be function to update a particular to do, and the last will be function to delete a to do, particularly the CRUD operation that we usually do in our database. So that's all. Let's start coding one by one. So let's give some space for the imports. Yep. So the first is to create a to do. So let's create a function. We are going to create the arrow function, and we are going to obtain the details about a particular to do from the body, from the request body, right? So we have studied that we can obtain data from the front end in three ways. One is query, one is the body, one is the params, that is the parameter. In this particular case, since we are taking a lot of information from the front end side, so it is a better approach to take it from the body, request body. So let's see how we do it. We have already did it in the user controller, so we are going to repeat the same things again. So the const create to do async equal to async. Why async? Because since we are dealing with database operations, so it is normal for the database to take some time to be communicated from the server, because they are always located in some other place or other continents. So the time gap, so you have to keep this time gap into consideration. So as per that, you need to use the async and await so that the asynchronous nature of the function call is maintained. So it is a arrow function which will take two parameters, that is the request and response. The request is something that the front end sends, which will have the data payload, and the response is something which will be sent from the front end, from the back end to the front end, which will have the result of the operation or any successful message, right? So everything inside the try and catch block, since there remains some possibility of error being occurred, so we can debug that easily. So console.log error, which will print the particular error which has happened, and as a result we can also send the response that we can send a response to the front end side that something went wrong while creating to do. Fine. So as good as that. The next thing which we have to do is we have to see the user model.js, the to do model.js, so that we can have information about what are the details we need to create a particular to do. So to create a particular to do, we need to have the title of the to do, the description, the status, which is not a required parameter. So by default, it is assumed that when a to do is being added, its status is not completed, that is, its status is false. And apart from that, the user's email who is creating a particular to do, as well as that. So let's go to the to do controller. So we have to get the things: title, description, user's email. These are the three things which you expect from the front end side. So we have mentioned that since we are sending lots of data, we are going to send it from the request body. So let's go const. There are two ways of writing this thing. I am showing you one by one. Okay. So the first way, which is not used till now, which is not used commonly in today's world, is to write like this: const title equals to request.body.title, const description equal to like this, const user user email equal to request.body.users email. Now this is the old way of writing on or importing or getting details from the request.body. In other ways, you can also directly destructure the object like this: const title description user email from equal to request.body. So it will destructure automatically as per the title, description and user mail. So you have to keep a thing in mind that this should be case sensitive and should match the details that is being sent from the front end side. So that's it. We have the details. The next thing is to call the todo model.js. We have to create a new object of that todo model type, and we have to save that object into the todo database. Okay. So how to do it? So it will be an await const todo equal to new todo model. So todo model is the model which we have created. So you need to import this from the todo model.js. In some cases, when you import, it will be todo.model, but it shows some error when you try to debug it. So you need to mention that todo model.js. So the error does not come. Okay. So once I have this all these details, I need to create an object of the todo model type. So how to do it? So you need to supply the title to the todo model, description and the user's email which you have obtained in the previous line. Now once you create the object of todo model type, the next thing which you probably need to do is to write todo.save. So this will make a entry in a database of the todo object which you have just created. And after the data has been created and saved to our database, we need to send a message that todo has been created successfully along with a status code. And in this case, what is the error I am getting? Could not redeclare block scoped variable. Okay, so I'm getting some sort of error here. All destructured emails. Okay, I probably did a mistake over here, so it will be in braces. So title, descriptions, users email. So there needs to be a first bracket, first parenthesis to when we are creating a new object. So I have missed that. So for that purpose, I was getting some error. So that's not the issue. So we have particularly created a todo controller to create a particular todo in the backend side, where we are saving the thing to a database and we are sending that successful message and along with the status code. Now status code, about which code means what, this have a different story. I will bring a new video regarding that. But up to now, you can keep in mind that if the status code ranges from 200s like that, it probably means that you have a operation which is done successfully. And if the status code go above 400, it means that there is some sort of error which happened in the backend side while performing your operation which you intended to perform. So that's it about the create todo. Now after the create todo, you probably need to export the create todo function which you have just created. You can export it as default also, or in directly parentheses also. That's up to you. Just you have to import it accordingly in the router when you will write. That will come in some different video in the next video only. So let's now write the controller to read all the particular todo that a particular user has created. So to know which todo that a particular user has created, we need to obtain his user's email. So the best way is to obtain it from the body only. Const read user todo. So async, then request response, QU is request response, and then arrow function. So everything will be wrapped inside the try and catch block. We will console log the error, as simple as the previous one which we did, and as a response we will send a message that something went wrong while reading the particular to-do that a user has created. Now, what we have to do inside this read to-do of a user, we have to obtain the user's mail from the front end side. From the body only we can obtain, and we have to find using that email that where in which to-dos the user's email exists as a creator, and we have to obtain all the to-dos and we have to return it to the front end side. As simple as that. So we can obtain the user's email like this: user email equal to request.body. So given some more space, right? Next we have to find const to-dos equal to await to-do model.find, and then we have to supply the by which property do you want to find, by which attribute you want to find. We want to find by the user's email which we obtained from the front end side. Now in some case you will see user email equal to or quotes colon user's email. Now this is a very old way of writing the JavaScript. Now since ES6 has come, we mainly write the user's email like this, since the case is matching and JavaScript will automatically understand it. So you will find a lot of ways of writing this. This is the most updated way, so that's up to you which approach you feel familiar with. Now, once I have all my to-dos, now my next task is to return all these to-dos to the front end side. So let's return the to-dos. So response.send to-dos with the status code of 200, which means our to-dos has been fetched successfully, and we are sending the to-do to the front end side. That's it. Now the next thing is to update a particular to-do. In update a particular to-do, let's now obtain the details about a to-do, about which to-do status do you want to update. So to uniquely identify a particular to-do, MongoDB allocates unique ID to every to-do that you create. So to update a specific to-do, you need to obtain the particular ID of the to-do you want to update. So to obtain the ID, so the best way is to tell the ID from the front end side. And so how will you receive it? There are various ways of receiving it, like the query also, params also, and the body also. Since we have already done with request.body, so we are going to try to obtain the ID in this case using the query only. So request.query.id, we will obtain the ID of the to-do whose status we want to update. By status I mean that whether it is true or false. So if you come here, the status by default it's false. That means the to-do has not been completed. So I am going to just change this to true. That's our objective. So once it is true, it will be found out that the to-do has been completed successfully. So let's go to to-do controller. So const update to-do status 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 equal to async, then request response okay arrow function. I gave some more space over here. Yep. So everything inside the try and catch block. So just console log the error which happens and then send a message that something went wrong while updating the to-do. Now here you have to obtain the ID from the front end side. So how will you obtain the ID? You will obtain the ID in way of query in this time. You can also obtain it from the body also. So since we have already seen how we can obtain it from the body, in this portion we are going to see that how can we obtain the ID from the query. Just simply write const ID equal to request.id. Right. Now once we obtain the ID, as simple as that. So request.query. QERY. Now if you did not destructure it like this, you can also write request.query.id, which I have shown for the case of body. Right. So just write const ID equal to request.query and you will obtain the ID. Well enough. So next thing which you have to do is const to do equal to await to do model.find. To do model.find by ID, since we have the ID of a particular to do and we are going to update it. So there is a function of mongoose to update, find by request.id, update ID commas, and then you toggle the status to be true. As simple as that. So this functions about find by ID, find and update, find and delete, which we are going to see in the upcoming function. All these are available in the Mongoose documentation, and you can have a look and have a read, and that will be easier for you to remember. Now, since I use all these functions in day-to-day life, so it has become quite used to for me to remember all these things, right? So you can read the documentation of Mongoose. It is a very matured and well-written documentation. If I have time, I will just give you a glance through the documentation of Mongoose so that you have some proficiency in understanding the use of these functions and what are the functions which exist in Mongoose. So with that, once I've updated, I can send a response that your to-do has been updated successfully, and this is the status code. Now, status code are actually for the testers of the backend API. So once the status code is received between the range of 200s, it means that the backend is working absolutely fine. So that's it about the to-do controller status, update to-do status. The last thing, okay, so we forgot to export the function which we created. So let's write this one and update to-do status. Okay, the last controller which we have is to delete a particular to-do. So to delete a particular to-do also we need the ID. So we can obtain the ID from the query this time. Okay, so const delete to do async await request response. This is a try and catch block. We'll be wrapping try catch. Okay, so you have to obtain the ID. So let's obtain it from the query only. Now once you have the ID, you have a function which is find by ID and delete. So here you have done find by ID and update. So we will do now find by ID and delete it. So okay, so const to do equal to await to do dot model dot find by ID and delete. Okay, and the to do will be deleted, and you can send a response that to do has been deleted successfully. Also, if you want to send a particular to do that has been updated, but that's not required. So if you want to log the particular to do here also, you can do the to do has been updated, and you can log the to do to the terminal also. So that's all. And similarly here, if you want to log the to do which has been deleted, you can also do console.log delete to do. Okay, so I did a spelling mistake over here, delete to do. Okay, and the last thing is delete to do, you have to export. So that's all about the to do controller which we have created in QuickTime. So what are the operations which we are performing mainly, which is the creation of a to do, reading a user to do that the user has particularly created. Third thing is to update a status of a to do, whether it is completed to incomplete. Okay, and the last thing is we are deleting the to do. So we have seen two ways of obtaining the data or the payloads from the front end side. One is request from body and one is from the query. So while testing, we will see how we can send the data in two different ways. One is from the body and one is from the query. So that's all about the to do controller. In the next video, we will start with writing the router. So in the routes folder only, we will write the routers, and we will understand how can we send data or get data from the database using the HTTP methods. So what are HTTP methods and how can we send data to the backend side, and how can we trigger some functions to work explicitly, we're going to see in the next video. So that's all in this video. I will see you in the next video. Till then, keep studying and keep exploring this backend series. And one more thing, if you have any sort of doubts, you can surely put down your comments and I will be happy to answer them and follow up with you. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.